is this just fantasy, or is this The Hunger and the Dusk, a new book out right now by G. Willow Wilson, Chris Wildgoose, and Msassyk? I picked this up mostly because I like this cover. I didn't know anything about it, but I could tell that it was fantasy. And I do like this border around the art here. In fact, that's kind of what drew me to it on the shelf. This Nouveau inspired design. And, we have some orcs on the front, some shadowy figures in the back, what looks like a human, and a bard type character. The vibe I get from this is that somebody has turned their, D&D homebrew campaign into a comic. That may not be the case, but I do know that that is the case because there's another book that I read recently that is someone's Pathfinder world. So that is a thing that just happens here is people these days are playing role-playing Dungeons and Dragons type games more than ever, possibly. I feel like it is because it just seems more popular and more talked about. And people are turning those stories into comics or possibly other media. In any case, I saw the cover, I liked the look of it, and I decided to give it a shot. And I was actually pretty pleased. So we're going to just look a little bit through this. I'm not going to try to spoil it too much because I do want people to go out and support creators. Now, the first thing that I think this does well or does right, as just for me, it's a preference thing, is I love this large image as our first image we get of this fantasy world. And I do love the emphasis on these like natural elements, like this big tree, this big swooping tree, like these interesting mountains in the back. Just a nice natural landscape and a very distinctive building that we'll probably see in the coming pages. Also, I like this nice, well illustrated wall and these nice figures. And I can tell just by their way they're dressed, the way they're put together, these are common people, you might call them. And I do like stories that include, let's call them non-player characters, or rather just regular ass people in this world, because that's something that really works for me in any kind of fantasy fiction, whether it's a comic or not, is if it feels like a world that a regular person can live in, or rather regular people live in. I never really feel as connected to a story if all we're getting is like main characters in action in the world. Mostly just because it can feel like the world just exists around them and there's nothing grounding it. So where there are just normal people there trying to live their lives, because I just feel like that adds just an extra sense of reality to it. So we have these folks picking what appears to be a fantasy version of an apple. And then they spot some orcs coming nearby. And by their reaction, you can probably guess that the orcs and humans don't get along, which is a very common fantasy thing. And so I just like to point out a few things. One is I really like this house. So like I said, we're going to see it again from a different angle. I like this little triangle window, and it feels very organic, or rather it feels natural to the setting. And I think that Chris Wildgoose is really doing a nice job rendering this world. It feels, it just feels like it fits the landscape. There's nothing like artificial about the angles or how it's put together. It feels handmade. like these elements would be in an ancient era, even though the timeline of the ancient world in a fantasy setting isn't like our own. We're using our own as reference point. Another thing I really like is, every fantasy world seems to enjoy doing its own interesting mounts. So rather than just horses or something like that, we have these kind of yak looking things, got nice long hair, these big horns, but not all of them, look exactly the same. So they're each individual animal, but yet they look like the same species. And I think it's nice. It's a nice look. Interesting, very, I hate to put the word standard in there for how these orcs look, but I can tell what they are by looking at them. I do like the variety of color. I think that's a nice addition. And also, I think they're costumed very well. Like, nothing that stands out too much, but yet, for the purposes of, say, this scene or maybe others, I can pick these out of a lineup. We have this one with red skin, with this hair coming up here. This one in a blue outfit with like long hair, and this bald one with kind of like the fur over his cloak. Just nice touches that make them distinct from panel to panel. So yeah, just makes it easier on the artist to get like basic details like that right. Also nice little mushrooms here. And in this scene, they're kind of getting a sense of how the orcs feel about the humans, and we're getting some news about the world. That there seems to be some sort of danger coming from the coast, and that they're contending with, but then they're also willing to push into this human territory, and so there's animosity between humans and orcs. Again, not unusual for a fantasy world, but still, something that tracks or is easy to follow. And yeah, nice little like costuming bits here on these figures. Again, this old man with the sickle is got enough details. Again, just even if it's just for this scene, so that I can follow who it is from panel to panel. I'm pointing simple things like that out because there's many artists that can struggle with that, and a lot of that comes from a background of drawing like single images or just doing like pinups and illustration. There's people who are very good at drawing and very good at drawing like figures and weapons and an action moment that are good at all of that, but when it comes to panel storytelling, just can't keep it straight or struggle to keep it straight. But Chris Wildgoose, I think, has a good handle on it, because even if every single tiny detail on a character's face isn't replicated in every single panel with exact right lighting and everything, it doesn't matter. It matters if this is a good, clear image that I know what's going on, and I do. And I can follow that this guy and this guy and this guy are the same person, and that this kid and this kid are the same person. So like that's really what it's about. And keeping things as consistent as possible, I think, is really important. But just so I'm just saying that Chris Wildgoose is doing a great job with his panel to panel storytelling. And then it appears that we're spotting something coming in the distance, but too late. And these are some really great panels. This thing getting upset by something like taking this orc's head. I don't even know what's happening, and like I guess that's the point, is it's meant to be like shocking. And this guy is losing like half his his head, leaving just the jaw behind. Um, and yeah, so like all of these creatures, all these things are dead. And so it's meant to evoke, like these big tough things are just oft with no difficulty. And so these town folk with their pitchforks, what are they going to do against whatever this is coming for them? And then again, they seem to know what they are, but we don't yet, which is part of story unfolding. And we get these really interesting silhouettes and this weird kind of noise coming along with them. It's them, the ones who left. So it's just interesting, like who or what are these things, and what is like what basically what is the story going forward here. And it's just, I don't know, it's a nice opening. It has me intrigued. And again, like, drawing this house once more here, but on a fire, and just really, really nice rendering there. But yeah, this sets up an interesting start to a story. So here we have our, I guess you could say, probably main characters for the story moving forward. And here they're mounted on what looks like, I don't know, large, I don't know. I mean, it's like I feel like there's an African animal that it is, like it's like a wildebeest or something like that. Which again is cool, and of course, fantasy mounts are fun. So it's not just a horse, but also getting anatomy of those things consistent is, I think, important. But Chris Wildgoose seems to be doing it. Nice, kind of costume design for our main characters. And, because there's a visual language to, this is the hero, this is the villain, and also not just this is the hero, but like, it seems like a competent but also kind of scrappy. Like he doesn't have like golden armor, and like he seems like he has parts of him that are kind of unprotected. Maybe that's for style, or maybe that's just to show that like there's some vulnerability there. But I like little pockets of red in there. Have our red-haired bard here, who doesn't play a big role in this issue. Our clerics have a nice distinct look. I like these little like vestment type things hanging down. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's all nice looking stuff. But really what matters is like, does it make for a compelling story? And so far, so good. Because the basic idea we have here is these clerics are trying to set up an alliance between orcs and humans, and this human is basically, and his soldiers are going to have an orc in their company, and they're going to try to fight off whatever this mysterious enemy is. And this is the orc that's going to be with him, and it's this, I would say like very pretty young lady orc. And that's one thing that is interesting about these orcs, is that some of them are a little more bestial than others. And I do find it interesting that this particular comic is not trying to pass off the more bestial orcs as, I would say, potential love interest, because they keep talking about how this feels like a marriage setup, and they do have this like little like kind of like bonding dialogue, where they talk about they're going to look out for each other. Again, so I feel like we're going to get there's going to be an element of romance to this story, but yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's like, okay, we have these two orcs that look way more humanoid, especially in the face, than the last set of orcs, and I don't know. It's just interesting. Then again, I feel like they just they're only going to go so far as telling the love story of a human and a non-human, and I guess they wanted to look as human as possible. But hey, if Shape of Water can go for it, we all can. I do like this interesting fantasy sword here with a big hole in it. I know it's not doesn't make sense strategically, but any engineering nerd that would complain about these the shape of this sword or the holes or whatever, that said it would weaken the sword or something, all I have to say is shut up. It's fantasy. The sword's magic or something. Fuck off. So yeah, they bond themselves together, and they're gonna look out for each other. I do like we finally get a close up of this cleric's face, and yeah, he's got some interesting sideburns. I like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it all holds together. It all looks nice. And then we have these things showing up and attacking, and they have long ears and stuff. I almost want to call them elves, rather than having orcs be the monster species in this world, elves are. But yeah, if you look at this thing, it's blindfolded, and here's another look at one of their heads, and yeah, I just get this, get his head chopped up, and I just get the sense, you got these long ears and stuff, and I just get the sense that that's what they might be, or they might not call them elves, but that might be the idea behind them, is that they're, the elves are again, the monster species. And so yeah, these are the creatures that they're gonna be fighting, and they're creepy and intense and horrific, and I'm all for it. And this guy kills one of these things with his shield, which which I don't even know why I'm saying again, but that's just, I like that, because it's not just I hit him with the sword again. There's really nice fight choreography going on these pages, and that's not easy to pull off. And I just think that Chris Wildgoose is doing a great job, kind of getting us to feel something in this action scene. Also, nice color work going on here. Just it all works for me. And yeah, I think that this one shows promise. Not every fantasy book that's on the shelves right now does, but this one, I just think that the art is good enough for it, for what it needs to be. I think that the characters are interesting. The world it sets up is interesting. The criticism I have, because this does have something that, for better or worse, is just a mainstay in the fantasy genre, and that is the world-ending calamity, and that's what this union is meant to stave off. Is that there is this threat that's going to destroy their world, and if they don't do something about it, the world as they know it will end, and humans will go extinct and all that. And that is high stakes, and I'm not going to begrudge them high stakes in an action adventure story. But it is something that every fantasy story deals with, these days is, yeah, it's just the whole world is at stake unless somebody does something about it. And I don't know. I feel like that about the real world now. I don't know how much of that I want to take in my fiction, especially because there's no, plucky band of heroes dedicated to fixing it in the real world. So it's not a deterrent from reading, and it definitely doesn't deter me from picking up more of this book. But I will say that it would be nice to read a fantasy story where the stakes aren't quite as high and it's more about the world and the characters' relationship to it and to each other, and not so much world-ending cataclysm. And in fact, I made that book called Side Questers. It is a fantasy adventure that is about the characters and the world and friendship and smashing monsters, and I am very proud of it. I've created 8 issues of it in total, and I have the individual issues for sale, and I also have the collected volume for sale. So this is all 8 issues in one nice convenient volume. Have it for sale on my website. I also have my fantasy anthology books called Haxan that are just tales of witchcraft and sorcery and all that good stuff, and they are available on my website as well. All of these stories are related to Side Questers, and if you like more traditional superhero stuff, I have 3-Panel Origin, my weekly webcomic. You can find it on Instagram. This is the collected first 3 years of comics. I have remastered all the art, so it looks better than ever. And you can buy this book on my website, as well as this book of short stories related to 3-Panel Origin. It's kind of in the realm of The Tick or something like that, where it's more comedic and offbeat. But yeah, those are my books. But in the end, this episode is about Hunger in Dusk, and I think you should buy it, and I am looking forward to reading more that this world and G. Willow Wilson and Chris Wildgoose have to offer.